We're going to say bye-bye to the DCEU. We got a stupid tweet of the week. Was that all right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
You can clip that if you want.
Nah, he'll leave it in.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Geek Fix right here on Thinking Critical Patreon, although the first topic will be up on YouTube. Lots of stuff to talk about regarding the DCEU moving into the DCU, and who better to do that with than my co-host on the Geek Fix, Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing well, doing well. Merry after Christmas, Wes.
Man, people are very impressed with the bling-a-ling that you got on that tree.
Well, they're saying it's going to be up till July, and then there's the hashtag Christmas conspiracy that it's been up since last year, and I just haven't taken it down. I just moved into another room so that you didn't see it.
There's a good chance that actually happened. Now, going into the DCU, we need to talk about this one first. We know James Gunn and Peter Safran are brought in, the co-heads of the new DC studios, changing away from the DCEU, and people should be very, very worried because James Gunn has stated that Tom King, who has done more damage, I think, to DC Comics in the last 5 years than any other creator, not even close, even more than Bendis, is super involved in this, and he's in the writer's room.
On the one hand, it would be nice to get him out of comics, but
it would be a bonus.
But it doesn't bode well for the DCU, and Aquaman's numbers don't bode well for the DCU. It just seems that people are just kind of like tired of this. And the fact that James Gunn is so closely married to Tom King in this endeavor makes me very wary of anything that's going to come out from in their movie slate in the future. So, I don't really know what to say about it at this point. It kind of seems like it's a dead brand. It seems like people are sick of it. And I don't know that you're going to be able to get like enough normies to know that, like, no, this is, remember all that shit that you hated and you didn't want to see and was terrible. This is not that version. This is a whole new version. Like, I don't know that you're going to be able to hook that many people into it.
Well, DC Comics fans might be wondering, well, just how tied into the DCU is he? We do have clarification. DC Studios co-head James Gunn has opened up about comic book writer Tom King's role in building the new on-screen DC universe. It has long been known that King would be involved with DC Studios in a creative capacity. He notably wrote the DC comic book series Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which serves as the basis for the upcoming DCU movie of the same name. According to Gunn, however, King's influence extends well beyond the Girl of Steel's return to the silver screen. Quote, Tom is an integral part of the DCU, not just Woman of Tomorrow, Gunn wrote on Threads. He's one of the first people I showed the Superman script asking for notes. He's included in various ways in numerous other projects, including A Woman of Tomorrow. Gunn also confirmed that he's been considering bringing some of King's other acclaimed comics to the big screen. And I think that is an enormous red flag. What do you think the Tom King, like the first note on Superman Legacy was? He hasn't tried to kill himself yet because Tom King likes to have children.
We need to have the moment where he realizes that he's different as a teenager and he considers suicide and he tries to kill himself. Yes. But then his superpowers kick in and he can't kill himself. And it's not depressing enough. Put a chick in it, make her lame, make her the mommy wife.
One of the big problems with the DCEU that it wasn't hopeful, and it was a very dark interpretation of DC Comics characters, and that's what Tom King is known for. And it feels like James Gunn didn't learn a lesson from the failure of the DCEU. He just thinks because he wasn't in charge, that was the problem.
Well, look, I mean, we got the Epstein list being released soon. Maybe this will all sort itself out.
Oh, man, Aaron, in poor taste there.
Is it though? I mean, this is I don't know. This is what you're hearing. You're hearing that like they're gonna have to do damage control and et cetera, because like names on the list and obviously Tom King is hooked in DC because mommy worked for DC and
she worked for Warner Brothers. So. She was a studio.
I'm sorry, Warner Brothers. Yes, that's I basically I've started to use them interchangeably and I should not. But she worked for Warner Brothers, so it's pretty well connected in there. I just can't imagine James Gunn, a guy who seems to know what a good story is. He certainly brought some good stories to the screen that I've absolutely loved. It's just bizarre to me that he looks at Tom King's work and gets excited about it, like thinks this is the guy.
Yeah, he's broken so many things, and you really don't even get DC Comics characters in a Tom King script for a lot of times. It's whatever story that he wanted, he breaks the characters around it, which is a pretty good description of what Zack Snyder did to Superman and other characters in the DCEU itself. And that's the thing that's got me really so worried, because I would say Tom King, with his interpretation of the characters or his spin on them, is even more damaging as far as the characterization than Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder didn't work.
Yeah, no, it didn't work. Dark and Gritty didn't work. We're not interested in that for
Batman.
Superman.
could get raped in prison, didn't work. Shocking.
Yeah, no, people weren't on board for that. And you've just seen the diminishing returns of the DC universe, and even a movie that made over $1 billion, the only DC movie I think that made over $1 billion, Aquaman. Its sequel just absolutely tanking at the box office, despite the fact that people find Jason Momoa very charming. You know, people like him. Women like him. I'm certain that there's going to be a larger female audience for Aquaman than there was for the Marvels, just because they're delivering something that that women actually want, which is they want to see a hot dude on screen. You know, it's really unfortunate this is what it's come to, but you know, you could have predicted this. Like the moment that they decided to put Zack Snyder on Superman, and they decided that Zack Snyder was going to be the visionary that brought the DC universe to life, you should have known what you were getting. You were going to get a sepia-toned, just trudge through, you know, depression and misery. And that's what the DCU delivered. And then, you know, you had Walter Hamada and what's her name come in and just completely not know what they were doing, just greenlight everything, you know, regardless of tone, regardless of how it fit in. And the DC universe has just been a mess from the beginning, and it just had no chance. And that stain, no matter what James Gunn thinks he's going to do, that stain is going to remain. You're going to bring in Tom King, and you're just cutting your legs out from under you right away, because you're saddling yourself with this guy who can do one story, and that one story is basically just bleak Zack Snyder stuff that didn't work the first time.
It should come as no surprise that Gunn would want King as one of his architects of the new DCU. After all, the filmmaker has made it very clear he is a fan of the writer's work. Earlier this year, Gunn said that King and Mitch Garrett's Batman One Bad Day, The Riddler #1, was one of his favorite Batman comics of all time. Gunn also recently named King and Greg Smallwood's The Human Target as his favorite comic book of 2023. And that stuff just is enormous red flags to me. Now, I will admit, The Human Target is probably the best comic book that Tom King has done in 4 or 5 years. But if you actually like Justice League International, you don't get those real characters. You get Tom King's interpretation of those characters, where you have Martian Manhunter's got a fire king since his family died in a fire. Guy Gardner is some type of, I guess, stalker, like sex criminal that needs to be murdered in the book. And then when you go to like One Bad Day, The Riddler, that is not the Riddler. That doesn't even come close to being what the Riddler is in DC Comics lore and history. That's just Tom King's bastardization of the character, because I guess he doesn't like who the Riddler really is. And I definitely get the sneaking suspicion we're still not going to see the real DC heroes on the big screen. We're just going to see bastardized versions of them that are just going to be there for trial porn and depression points.
Well, I think that you've stumbled on to exactly why James Gunn likes Tom King's work, because James Gunn kind of does the same thing. He breaks characters around what he wants them to be. Now, he's a talented filmmaker, and he's made that work. But, you know, Peacemaker is obviously broken around what he wanted the character to be, and all the characters.
Peacemaker's not a well-known established property. Even Guardians of the Galaxy, not a well-known established property. You can kind of play with those characters, and obviously fans of the originals, whether it be the Charlton characters or Guardians of the Galaxy, they might be a little bit upset, but they're not like really well-known and established like a Superman or a Batman or a Green Lantern or all these other heroes that they're going to be using to fuel the next iteration of the DCU.
And all these characters that have been handed Tom King and he's been allowed to destroy. You know, Wally West still has not recovered from Heroes in Crisis. You know, he probably never will. It'll take decades to undo all that damage if, you know, DC even survives. I think at this point, look, at this point, as kind of interested in as I was in Superman Legacy, just because I liked some of the casting decisions. It seemed like James Gunn was casting actors that looked like their comic book counterparts. You know, as kind of interested as I was, at this point, I'm just like, please let the merger with Paramount or let Universal buy them and just let this company be restructured again and let this movie slate be wiped away. I think that we would be better off not having any DC movies for a good 5 years. And get somebody in there who understands these characters and knows how to build a universe. You know, maybe like a Paul Dini, you get him in there to oversee everything and to kind of pull everything together coherently. But instead of like always going to these auteur filmmakers and just letting them do whatever the hell they want and step all over everything that has made these characters popular and made these characters endure for decades.
Yeah, because Tom King has left a path of destruction in DC Comics. If you're familiar with the DC characters and movies and animation, but you haven't read Tom King comics, like you said, the Wally West Heroes in Crisis story, where Wally West becomes a serial killer and then covers it up by going into the future and murdering his own like self. Terrible damage to the character. When we got into Strange Adventures, you know, Adam Strange is a fucking war criminal who sold his daughter to the enemy and is then seen like blowing the heads off of prisoners of war during the story. It's supposed to be like a nice pulpy sci-fi adventure kind of hero. Absolutely destroyed that. In the same comic book, we see Mr. Terrific having a moment with Adam Strange's wife, explaining that when his unborn son died, when his wife was in a car wreck, he felt relieved because he just wasn't ready to be a father. Oh, that felt very super heroic. We had Batman go to a wedding chapel to where a lady is getting married. The Joker has her in his arms. He's got a gun to her head, blows her head off in front of Batman. Batman does nothing about it whatsoever. He actually kneels down and prays with him. Absolutely, completely out of character. And this is what Tom King likes to do with these characters. And there's always lots of kids dying. There's lots of suicide, almost prevalent through almost every one of his stories. That was almost the key part of Mr. Miracle as well, that kind of got his name going at DC Comics. People do not understand. You might like Tom King until he's writing your character. And once you see what he's going to do to your character, you will never like him again. And then you finally understand why people didn't like him to begin with.
I wonder why sales on these superhero books are so low. I wonder why, you know, the industry is in such a downslide when you have all these writers who aren't interested in heroism. They're interested in tearing symbols of heroism down. They're interested in telling stories of how flawed and terrible these people are because, yeah, I don't know why, because they're flawed and terrible themselves. So they feel like they need to drag these icons down to their level. You know, the whole point of Superman is that he's supposed to be aspirational. We're supposed to aspire to be Superman. We're supposed to aspire to the heroism of a Batman, even while we recognize his inherent flaws. You know, there's all these things that we're supposed to take from these stories, and none of these people understand the nature of heroism. They don't understand the nature of sacrifice and of, you know, just doing the right thing. So they just, all they can do is destroy. I think there's a Tolkien quote that describes this pretty accurately.
Yeah, and that's just the most worrisome thing. We knew that Tom King was going to be in the writer's room, but he's the first guy that James Gunn handed the Superman Legacy script to because he thinks his opinion on the character is the best. He thinks his opinions on DC characters are the best. And he's done so much damage just to the brand and all the characters, and certainly even the villains and stuff like that. And in a lot of cases, it does feel like it's Tom King, you know, talking to his therapist using the characters and then expecting us to pay for it. Well, guess what? If you put that on the big screen, even more people are going to be turned off. And certainly normies aren't going to be out there and so forgiving as lifelong collectors of DC characters like your Batmans and your Adam Strange and your Justice League International. You know, they're just going to ignore it, and then you're going to have another dead franchise before it even had a chance to take off.
You know, we just need to stop letting immoral people write what are supposed to be morality tales. You know, you can't, it's just incongruous. They don't understand it. They mock it. They think that, you know, they're smarter than the reader. They think that they're smarter than the viewer. And they think that they're smarter than these giants who created these characters, you know, your Siegels, your Schusters, your Bill Fingers. It's just what a miserable and depressing time it is, and what a miserable and depressing group it is that are handling these heroes. You know, I think it's just time to, you know, for us to just kind of like let it go and move on to other media until somebody in the company goes, hey, you know what? We'd like to start making money again. Maybe we should, you know, get back to the roots of what made these things popular in the first place. Until that happens, I think that, you know, we just have to walk away. Like, I can't even get mad about this anymore. It's just par for the course.
As for Gunn, he is busy preparing Superman Legacy for the upcoming reboot of the Superman film series. Gunn will direct the DCU installment from his own screenplay. David Corenswet will lead the picture as the titular Man of Steel, and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, and Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Filming is scheduled to begin in March 2024. And we do know, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, or act like it's not there, this is the beginning of what's supposed to be a 10-year plan. And I think he announced 8 or 10 film projects. A lot of them were very curious choices. We've seen Wonder Woman on the big screen, not exactly successful. Obviously, you're going to use the Tom King story for that one. Swamp Thing, very cool character, a lot of cool history to that character. Is it going to work in a movie that's attached to and kind of part of a shared cinematic universe? Not really sure. The Authority felt like a real gamble on that one. They should be the bad guys in the Superman movie. And it just feels like, other than maybe The Brave and the Bold, which is going to be another iteration of Batman, even though they already have a successful franchise out there, it doesn't feel like it's a great idea, even if, to his credit, for the most part, James Gunn is going out there and mining some of the best writers out there, a lot of Grant Morrison, a little bit of Alan Moore, but also your Tom Kings and whatever. And just, knowing that Tom King fancies himself as the next Alan Moore, I do hope this works out for him being like a DC Studios executive and not a comic book writer. But I just don't think his ideas are going to translate either. And I don't think we're ever going to get halfway through James Gunn's 10-year plan.
No, I don't think so either. I think that, it's all nice to have a 10-year plan, but your first movie out of the gate has to make money. Your second movie out of the gate has to make money. And I don't think that Warner Brothers is in a position to gamble anymore. And so this is a huge gamble. Having Tom King in the room, and James Gunn listening to him is a huge gamble. Just even putting out a movie now after the just slate of disastrous films they've made by trying to rush and compete with Marvel. When Marvel was on top, it was because they had a slow build. And they had talented people that were coming in and were kind of like laying these foundations and putting bricks in the wall. And DC was like, how do we just jump to the Justice League? How do we just like get right there? And it never worked because you never fleshed any of these characters out. You never understood any of these characters. You depended on a man that can't write characters and doesn't recognize what makes characters compelling, which is Zack Snyder. And it looks like now you've handed the whole thing to James Gunn, who I had confidence in until they started talking about how he thinks that Tom King is just the absolute, pinnacle of what comic writing should be. That tells me that he's got shit tastes.
Well, and also, like, if you go see Peacemaker, and I'd like the Peacemaker show, but he did absolutely take an enormous piss out of Superman and Batman, especially Superman in that thing. I don't think he takes a lot of the more aspirational heroes, a lot of the more morally centered heroes all that seriously. I think he thinks they're a joke. And that's probably one of the big reasons that he is kind of attracted to Tom King's writing. Yeah,
because it tears down all of these icons and it makes them small. And I think that's the problem, is that all the characters that you get in, as much as I thought Peacemaker was an amusing show and I thought it had some really great moments, unfortunately, you do walk away from it feeling dirty. And, you feel like you need a shower. And you can do that with certain characters, but you can't do that with Superman. You can't do that with some of these big icons. If anything, I think that this is just going to shoot itself in the foot right out of the gate, because in these times that we're living in, I think people are looking back towards those aspirational heroes. One of the reasons that Star Wars was such a big hit in '77 was because all of the movies that were coming out, the attitude in the country was bleak, and all the movies that were coming out were bleak and depressing and dark. And Star Wars came, and it was just a heroic fantasy morality tale, technology that we'd never seen before. We'll never have that kind of thing happen again, probably. But it was just, one of those amazing moments where everything just kind of came together. But that was the mood that the country was in. They wanted something aspirational. They wanted a good tale of heroism. And when you look at like the success of Top Gun Maverick, in the times that we live in, and that movie had no rights making $1 billion. Like, nobody thought that was going to happen. But it told a very, heroic pro-America story that people got behind because of the way that we feel right now. And that's what they need to be leaning into.
I was nervous just from the get-go because Superman did seem like such a bad choice for James Gunn to write and direct it. And I'm definitely feeling that way even more. I think James Gunn probably, if he was going to do one of these projects, being the co-head of DC Studios, he probably should have just done The Authority. Because I think what that team represents and what it could do with that team would actually fit his sensibilities, and Tom King probably be helpful on a project like that, but he's going to do nothing but kind of drag down a project like Superman, because I don't think either of these dudes understand why Superman is important.
No, I don't think they do either. And I think we're in for a rough ride, DC fans. Sorry, it's going to keep going.
Absolutely. Now, Aaron, this is just the first 20 minutes or so of the Geek Fix. We've got another hour and 40 minutes. We will talk about the fallout of obviously Aquaman bombing. We're going to say bye-bye to the DCEU. We got a stupid tweet of the week. And you're going to review Rebel Moon from Zack Snyder, correct?
I am. I actually watched Rebel Moon, so I have some thoughts.
If you would like to hear the rest of this and you're not supporting us over there on Patreon, there's a link in the video description if you would like to support that. This is on the Aaron's Never-Ending Christmas Tree tier of support. Definitely check that out because we got a lot more geeky stuff to talk about today.
Damn straight.